Hello, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Arthur's Roundtable. Super grateful for everyone that's joined us and listened in and shared and so forth. And so we really appreciate that. We're happy to have Rick Walker with us today. Big shout out to Ben who has connected us, and we're looking forward to having our chat with Rick today, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. So, Rick, thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for for inviting me to be here. This is great. This is
You're,
great.
you're very welcome. Let's start at the beginning, if you don't mind. Tell us about your sort of origin story, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Arthur. The I guess the story starts in Corpus Christi, Texas. I grew up in the poverty of a two-bedroom home. When I was in college, I borrowed $1,000 from my mom and started a company in the real estate business that did facilities operations and maintenance. So we essentially provided like firm fixed prices to go and take care of schools and hospitals and other buildings like that. And eventually grew that up to 400 W-2 employees when I was in my mid 20s.
Wow.
And so that was an interesting time because how we had grown up, I'd never met anyone that had that many employees. So I never had anyone to go to for advice. And so we scaled that business for a time, started another business at the same time, scaled that business into about 6 states. That business was in the federal contracting space, and I exited that and actually gave it to my dad, um, who uh, who had retired from my first company for about 3 or 4 years, and he was looking for something to do. So I gave it to my dad. That's probably been about 7 or 8 years ago, something like that. Um, and so I've been in the original business or some derivative of that successor entities. You change entities for tax reasons, that sort of thing. For I think this is my 29th year,
Well,
and so we've had a really great time. Then done some other things sort of corollary to that. I ran for U.S. Congress a few years ago. I also last year I released a book that by the grace of God became the number one international bestseller in the leadership category called Nine Steps to Build a Life of Meaning, and that was sort of a surprising fluke. I
well,
have no competency in the area of book marketing, so I'm going to chalk that up to a fluke.
yeah.
And so today I'm the chief investment officer of the successor company of that first company I started 29 years ago called Lumicree, and we invest in commercial real estate with legacy families and investment funds.
And is it largely Texas based?
Yes. We're heavy on Texas. We just exited our portfolio of retail and office back in January, and so we're going all in on industrial, what we call 10x industrial assets.
So I'd like you to define that if you don't mind. So for the benefit of the audience, but let's first take a little uh, detour about the book. Why would somebody read the book? What would they get out of it?
I had a realization that there was a generation of young men that were struggling, that were sort of the 25 to 45-year-old age group. In fact, I did a little bit of a survey because I happen to know some people that are in that space from the uh, e- all the way from the clinical to the entertainment spectrum of dealing with that age group. And 95% of the individuals I surveyed about 35 people, said that 75% or more of the young men in that age group were underperforming in life. Maybe they had a lack of love or a lack of ambition or a lack of attention to be able to pay to something that was important. And so um, I, I I was about 45 about that time, and I realized that I probably had a responsibility given the experiences that I'd gone through. I'd even at the same time of growing the business, I even scaled an international nonprofit from 800 to 2,300 employees across 50 countries. And so I was used to kind of staying busy, right? Staying busy, trying to do a bunch of different objectives at the
Little
same time.
different than the people you surveyed,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And so I thought, what is the number one need of the men that are running the family offices that we work for? It's for the next generation of men to sort of pick up the pace and grow and mature. And so I was in that interesting gap between the current generation that are running these family offices, investment funds, and the next generation. And so as a 45-year-old I could write that book, because I thought that maybe the generation that was older than me would hope that the young men that are behind me, would want to take up the same degree of effort, competency, and learning that I had undergone. And so I put this book out into the marketplace of July 2025, and my hope was to um, help rip away the comfort that I believe was enslaving their potential. And so the book was purely aimed at this 25 to 45-year-old underperforming male demographic. And I and they've been reaching out in mass, just asking for private conversations, private, you know, everything from business to family to depression. And it's actually been really, really encouraging to be able to pour into these young men that I didn't have access to before.
Do you think that what do you think catalyzed the lack of ambition? And maybe I'm not terming it the right way. Uh,
Yeah.
my generation is really simple. You work hard, take care of your family, and, have some sort of moral compass, and everything's going to be all right. Um, and was it because these people were sitting in the basement all night and playing video games with people around the world and taking the input from that cohort of people and just not feeling like they had any reason to be ambitious?
I think there's two parties that I believe are responsible. It was a little bit of that, but it was also the prior generation who allowed them to do that when they were younger. The prior generation that gave them the computers and let them spend 12 hours a day on the computers. The prior generation that had some success, and they created a little bit of margin in their lives, and they used that margin to provide comfort for the next generation. They want their kids to have to suffer the way they did, and not suffering. You don't build steadfastness. You don't bring fortitude. You don't build strength. Um, and without resilience, they have nothing else to fall onto, and so they're not they're not looking to take any risk, and not wanting to take any risk, you stay where you are, and anything that stays where it is ends up dying, and that's the unfortunate situation. So what do? You have to trigger such an emotional situation in their lives such that they want to change. They realize that they have to change, and that's really what I am trying to do with that demographic through this book effort. Um, but yeah, it is the comfort that enslaves their potential, in my opinion, for my research. And that comfort, this is the interesting thing. If you follow the concept of comfort down to its logical conclusion, it ends every single time in an evil. It ends in an evil. Either it ends in the bastardization of what the potential person could potentially do with their lives, or it ends in the desire to never push the edges and grow and scale and learn. And anything that doesn't learn and scale, it dies.
Yeah.
And all that it can feed on is pride that they already know everything that they need to know or can do everything that they need to do. And that's where the disconnect is, and that's what we're trying to solve right now, Arthur.
That's really, really interesting because I have been exposed to people that seemingly are comfortable, but have no real life. And I'm always
Yeah,
perplexed and saying, how can you be so, what satiates you just stay there?
yeah,
Because it's not very interesting way to spend your time, right? I mean,
that's right.
and of course, I might have my own point of view, so it may be irrelevant to them, right? Uh, when we were growing up, it was like, okay, you saw other people living a different lifestyle and you wanted that on some level, aside from the responsibilities of family and so on and so forth, right? So
Yeah,
you aspire to stuff isn't necessarily the solution, but money gives you freedom, right?
that's right. That's right. And that's why money that produces freedom is best held by the hands that created it.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, I used to be chairman of the largest faith-based, uh, charitable foundation here in Texas, based out of Houston, and we had situation after situation where one generation had gifted there was this trend back in the 80s where everyone would put $1 million into a trust for each of their kids when their kids were young. Well, that those trusts, depending on what they're invested in, many were invested in oil companies just by the nature of the Houston economy.
Right.
Some of these trusts have 25 to $60 million in them now, and it
Yeah.
just ruins their kids. Their kids never have to work again, and the parents can't get the money back. I mean,
Right.
the money becomes a curse, and the
Right.
comfort becomes a curse. And great intentions, great planning, probably from some masterful tax advisor, but it backfired. And so the need to work to generate the income is is a necessity in life because it's that friction. It's that friction that we all need, and we do our kids a
Contrast, right?
disservice.
Right.
Say that again?
Contrast. It's like
Yes.
it creates, uh, if you don't have to do anything and you have sustenance, that's probably a good thing. But if you're, yeah, not don't aspire to anything other than that and you just want to be a playboy, that gets old pretty quick, right? But
Yeah.
you put a few years behind you and you go, well, is that all there is? Right.
Yeah. 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 If you want to make someone unproductive, you would strip away all the means of responsibility. And so one of the things I tried to do through this at work is I have like a 9-step process that I use for investing for portfolio management, and I also have a 9-step process that are based on sort of turning around the lives of these young men. And one of the principles in that is that the thing that you're supposed to be doing, which is also the hardest thing that you could possibly imagine doing, and the thing that you're most avoiding doing is also the same thing you should be doing very next,
Yeah.
right? And so
True.
it's always the thing you least want to do that you most need to do next. And it's that friction. It's picking up the phone to make that cold call, right? It's
Right.
asking the
Yeah.
girl out on the date to go get the cherry Coke at Sonic. It's that sort of thing. And guys like you and me who have built some things, we understand that that's the way that you push through. But we never thought about it in that technical sense. We just thought, hey, we got to pick up the call and make this sell. We got to pay some bills.
We got to pay some bills. We have to make shit happen. There, right. What's the
Yeah.
old saying? There's three kinds of people. One that watch what happened, people that make things happen, and people wonder what happened, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it was anathema to me that people just wouldn't have drive, but I get it, right? On some level. Do you think that this whole Charlie Kirk and the the trend for young men to have listened to him, for example, and others, to start attaching themselves to religion is part of the solution to the problem?
Yeah. So I've got a little bit of a unique perspective on that. About a year before he died, my wife and I had a 3-hour dinner with Charlie.
Nice.
And we talked about everything. We talked about politics, we talked about God, we talked about great literature. It was a wide ranging conversation. Lewis makes this comment that on occasion, like rare times in life, you'll run across someone that you realize is a dominant intellect that's trying to lift up a lower intellect into its realm. And that was the only time in my entire life. I've read a little bit, I know a little bit. I've been around some really smart people. That was the only time in my life where someone who happened to be younger than me, where someone was clearly the dominant intellect and I was in some sort of lower dimension of intellectual capacity, and he was trying to kind of lift me out of my weak mindedness and my weak spineness, and trying to kind of bring me along to where he thought. And he's was such an amazing man that I and that's one of the few cases I would defer to someone like Charlie just because of my personal interaction with him, that he probably knows better than I about certain things like that. And you look at the results, like look at this great organization he built.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah,
It's absolutely
yeah,
amazing. There, you can't argue. This is my perspective, not necessarily a popular one, but aside from the problems with dogmatic religions that come along with all kinds of problems, it is a good basis for rules to live by. Like it creates a chassis for
Yes.
family and good construct, and it there's all kinds of crap that comes along with that just because religions have been notoriously been leveraged for other things, but in its core, it has good intention, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think we often forget that it was the Christ's enemies were the religion. He was always at war with religion. In fact, he was probably the most anti-religion person that's ever existed. Right, he hated the religious class, and they hated him. I don't know if he hated him, but he was always warred, he was always sparring with them.
Yeah,
And so I think, like, what you just said is, like, perfectly natural. Like, it's something like the thing that we're all thinking, like, we can't stand the hypocrisy of these pastors that have the jets and all this kind of stuff. Like, I think he was right there with us. I think he was right there with us. Um, and so I think you're right. Like, an engine without a chassis, like you said, is an engine that goes nowhere.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's really interesting. It's actually inspiring to see these kids in schools going to fellowship and making you know whatever you might think of Catholicism or any other religion for that matter. It's actually the fellowship is what matters, right? I think.
yeah, I think that's a big part of it, right? I think that the interaction, like, I could never fake a love for a God, whether I believe one or not, unless I could love my fellow man.
Right.
And if I can't figure out how to get through the crap of my fellow man who stabs me in the back, who robs me, who lies to me, I've got to. If I can begin to forgive a man like that, I could begin to comprehend how a God could forgive a guy like me.
Yeah.
Because if I'm honest with myself, we're honest we're all honest with ourselves, we would realize that we're probably the worst possible people we've ever met
Isn't
because
that
we know
really
what.
interesting? Do you,
Yeah.
it reminds me of a story where Joseph Campbell.
Hmm.
So Joseph Campbell makes this trip to India and is really interested in meeting this guru. He waits and meets the guru, and he asks the guru a question. He said, "How do we reconcile the love of humanity for people who rape and kill and plunder and do all these bad things?" And the guru says, "For me and you, we can." So it's kind of like what you just said. It's like it's
Yeah.
just part of the human fabric, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I love the fact that you brought up Joseph Campbell. I mean, what just a great mind to understand the importance of the downfall,
Oh,
like
yeah,
the
totally.
hero's journey. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, the hope, the downfall. That if there's no opportunity to ascend, like, you really have nothing. So therefore, you've got to be in a lesser position, whether it's humility, maybe it's a tragedy that happens to you. Like, it's all pinned up in the ascent, and nothing that hasn't first descended, gone through a tragedy, can ever have an ascent. And if you can ever have an ascent, you can never have a story worth telling. You never have a life that really lives, and that's just so that's just so important for the types of men that we talk about, and even their fathers and grandfathers who, sort of let that stuff slide while they were focused on the businesses.
yeah. It's what you said about the friction of doing hard stuff. Joseph Campbell said, "Life is full of sorrow, embrace it," which is an oversimplification of that. But really, when you think about it, yeah, yeah, it's going to happen. So, you know, yeah, I think the Buddhists were onto something about examining something and then letting it go, sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and your power in life oftentimes is what you decide not to think about.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so anything that captures your mind, since you're a being that only has one attention to pay at any one given moment, anything that captures your mind controls your mind. And so every second you have a master that you did not pick, but that has picked you, has chosen you, it has determined your destiny at that point, unless you can shake free of the thought. And I think, yeah, that's certainly a uh, really big concern of mine. for the kids that are on the digital devices that are sort of addicted to the scrolling stuff is they've lost their attention span. I've heard now that a lot of kids that are under 20 now, their attention spans are less than 6 seconds on a recent report that I saw. I mean, how are you
It's
ever going to develop a strategy?
yeah, yeah, there's focus has its merits, right? There's,
Yes.
um, I'm a New Yorker, but I've spent a lot of time in Utah in the last 4 or 5 years and met some really fascinating people that were former LDS and current LDS, and I bring it up because of the cold call thing about comment that you made. It turns out that w they're the best salesmen I've ever seen because they are sent on missions to sell this amorphous thing, and they don't take it personally. So, they're running through walls and trying to sell, the LDS church and, you're gonna, go on to the next life, which is, you know, kind of the hardest thing to sell of everything, right?
Yes.
And so they never take the no as a personal affront. It's really
Yeah.
interesting. They build that resilience, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I remember when Salesforce moved their business development group to Utah a number of years ago, how they got a lot of news about the culture there. But yeah, you're right. You're totally right. I mean, if you think about it, they're going door to door to sell a promise in exchange of everything. Like
Right.
you literally have to give up your entire life and all your
Right.
possessions if you're really going to kind of live that life truly. And all you get is a promise out of it. Whether the promise has something physical attached to it at the end is
Yeah.
there's that's for your own decision. But
It turns
yeah,
out that that promise has been pretty powerful through the years, but, um, a lot of
yeah,
people do that.
yeah.
So, super, super fascinating. Thanks for engaging that conversation. I appreciate it. So, to tell everybody the name of the book again, so,
Yeah.
maybe they can pick it up for their next gen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So on Amazon, just 9 steps to build a life of meaning, or you can just type my name in, Rick Walker, and steps. It's probably easier to find it that way. But I think it's on Kindle for free right now. So over the next probably week or two, probably be free on Kindle. Just trying to give it away. But it's just an interesting thing that um, one of the key concepts of that is um, a line that nothing that you've not given away will ever really be yours. Nothing that you have not given away will ever really be yours. The idea so that's the idea of the businessman, of the investor who realizes that if I hoard the money to myself, inflation will eat it up.
Yeah,
But if
yeah,
I give the money to an entrepreneur that can deploy the capital in an efficient manner, I have hopes of not having inflation eat up that capital.
yeah,
And so it's this idea that if you want to really have like be able to keep your life, you got to give your life away to others.
yeah,
It's like it's all these paradigms. You see in the sow in the farmer that sows the seed into the ground that literally gives up the seed. And that's the only way he's ever going to have any hope to have shade and have fruit in the end. He's got to give it away. And so it's an argument for giving as the method to getting. In fact, giving is the only way to actually keep anything. And so I think that, I've got principles like that throughout the book, that there may be certain things that young men are going through, and even older men. I've had a lot of older men reach out about it, but they're antithetical. Everything is paradoxical or contrarian on purpose.
that's really interesting. I think that's right. It's really fascinating to, uh, study people who have had success and try to deconstruct, whatever your definition of success is, right? And deconstruct how they got there. And in my view, there's been a fair amount of luck in some cases, right? But there's others that they just everything they touch that turns to gold, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And a lot of it's that who luck. It's that one person you should never have met that you ended up sitting next to in an airport when you got snowed in on a flight.
Yeah,
That's how probably one of my 2 or 3 big who lucks happened.
yeah,
And you just get talking, but you have to initiate. You have to initiate, and you got to engage with life around you for that who luck to be able to happen.
yeah. And so, I mean, let's. COVID was interesting, right? Because it caused us to not be able to be in person, but you had a relationship bank, let's just say,
Yeah.
of people that you did see in person, and so you were able to not have to have that in-person meeting to be able to get on Zoom and still execute on business, right? Because you had that prior relationship,
Yes.
that was catalyzed by that in-person meeting. It's still I think that that in real they call it what do they call it in real life, IRL,
Yeah.
that's gonna become, exponentially more important as AI does all the minutia that nobody wants to do anyway, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that I found since COVID reopened everything, I've traveled a whole lot more because the impact of being in person with people so much stronger
I think so.
in the end.
I think that's right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think missing out of that made us realize the value, right? You never miss something unless you never treasure something unless you miss it first.
Exactly. In the context of, Family Office Insights, we were doing 2 or 3 in-person meetings a week in the Midtown conference room in a law firm, right?
Wow.
Before COVID. And that pressing the flesh, old school, thing worked. Everybody got to know each other and things happened, right? All the
Yeah.
time. And then we switched to Zoom. And now we're doing it differently where we have just more casual rather than putting 30 family offices in a room and having people pitch to them. We're just getting together and having cocktails and sort of, you know, slow, or no pressure type environment, which I think has been exponentially better. But that's something else. So tell us about the real estate business a little bit. I mean, what a
Yeah.
great asset class.
It is, and so the asset class, I really like niche assets. I like to have niche assets within my portfolio, and one of the interesting things is everyone's building industrial right now, and everyone's building data centers right now.
Yeah.
Um, Data centers are really interesting because you have a GPU that's being put in a lot of the hyperscalers that depreciates over 18 to 24 months, and then you have to replace it. So, right, so the main asset that's inside the building that the data centers are built around has a 18 to 24-month depreciation cycle inside of an asset that has a 30 to 50-year depreciation cycle purportedly. But they're off kilter, right? They're not two different. They're two
Yeah.
different solar domains. And then a lot of the hyperscalers do not want to keep the asset on their own books, which
Yeah.
tells you something else.
Right.
So they're licensing GPUs from NVIDIA and they're leasing the data centers from a developer or for some other institution. And they're not carrying the spread. And so there's a massive amount of risk there. Um, and then you go back to the industrial sector and you see this demand for power and the obsolescence of so many of these warehousing assets that are in the right places, right? You have a lot of market movement towards the Texas area, in the Sun Belt region, just simply because of geopolitical facts that are in place, whether it be onshoring, nearshoring. You look at the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, you saw that map with all the tankers making a V line for Texas to be able to load back up.
And by the
Um,
way, that map was just some percentage of the real because there were a lot of uh, this is not inside baseball, but we have a lot of ex-CIA friends,
mhm.
and a lot of those ships turned off their locators because they didn't want that data to be out there for whatever reason, whether it's China or what doesn't matter. But what we see in that map with that crowded strait, there's another 20 or 30% that turned off their beacons.
Wow.
It- yeah, it's super
Wow.
interesting. Yeah.
That is interesting. That is interesting. So you got this thing happening with the data centers there that are traditionally, call it 16-foot clear heights, and you got warehouses that are anything between 20 and 40-foot clear heights, but they're underpowered. These are overpowered, and they've got in my view, a very short lifespan. Because remember, you got someone like Elon Musk out there that's sort of the harbinger of death of all industries and even of federal agencies,
Yeah.
who just got permitted to launch up to 1 million new satellites. A lot of those will be small data centers into space, with this free electricity there's low friction. It's another ball game there. So
Yeah.
you've got like all these terminal risks happening over here. You have all these risks over here. The warehouses are the wrong places. They're underpowered. And then you've got these other market instances that are market triggers that are happening right now. You have a new electric semi truck charging protocol that's being implemented where you might need between 1 and 2 megawatts per maybe 50 bay warehouse, additional power. A lot of the warehouses can't sustain that. You have an increased automation and robotics need that's all going to require charging and power. I mean, look at Elon. He's closing down the Fremont factory. He's not building 2 of his 4 models anymore, and he's going to go all in on robots.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's
and
crazy.
by the way, I hear he's going to buy the first 2 years of robot production for his own personal use
I
too.
believe it. Yeah.
And
And
and then
he's just on another level.
he
Uh,
is.
I just got this, I haven't started reading it yet, but it's kinda like the Book of
Oh
Mormon, the
yeah,
Book of Elon, right?
yeah. Eric Jorgensen, yeah, great author. Yeah,
Yeah,
he does a good job with those books.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh, that's gonna be fascinating.
yeah.
And so you got the semi truck charging, you've got the heavy automation, but you have to, this is something really really important is we're all using our chat GPTs and our Geminis and querying these things, and a lot of these servers are 1,000 miles away, and you've got a little bit of latency. You've got 7 to 12 seconds and milliseconds of latency each way, and for some high tolerance manufacturing, and even for some security needs. You saw this recently with the open cloud for people building their own AI servers.
Yeah,
Google has a product called Gemma that they just released version 4 of, where people are wanting to have their AI on site, not connected to the internet.
yeah.
Um, we believe that there's going to be a massive demand for on-site agentic compute in the next 3 to 5 years for these logistics, for these manufacturing facilities. And so all of this is going to create a need for between 2x and 10x power demand than you would traditionally have in a logistics building. And so we've got our first 148,000 square foot warehousing going up, logistics warehouse going up now that I have 2x power. We're working on some pipeline projects right now that I have 10x power, up to 1 million square feet of development here in the Houston area. And we believe that there's going to be big demand from both sides. The data centers aren't going to be able to meet the atom level needs, the structural needs, whenever they're not used anymore, and the current facilities aren't going to be able to meet the bits and the energy needs. And so there's going to be a new need for a new type of asset that'll be these 10x assets, that are going to power the
To
future.
have
And so we're
com
building a future proof.
so it's not just power, it's compute on site.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You have this technical need to have multiple accesses to multiple fiber chains. So you can't just have one fiber coming into a building. You need to have multiple routes coming to the facility to provide that additional redundancy. And so we've got one building right now. We're in the process of redeveloping with the family office, that has 72 fiber routes coming into that block, that city block. It's in a major downtown. And 72 fiber routes is just an astronomical amount of redundancy there. And it also has virtually unlimited power. And so that's going to be one of the really big needs. People are be thinking about redundancy because you're going to have buildings where there's not going to be really humans there. There'll be some engineers and there'll be some electrical staff there that are going to deal with actuators and things like that. But it's going to be mainly robotics and mainly automation. And you're going to need that redundancy because information and power are going to be the two fungible currencies of the AI market. It's not going to be financial currency anymore. It's going to be something different. And these AI automations, these AI um, uh, LLM or agentic types of data centers are going to be trading in bits and power, not in money. They'll be earning money, but then they're going to convert that very quickly into compute or into data access to some sort of
That's
power.
super interesting. So, who would be the
Mm.
customer? The so you have the building, you've got the compute in the building, you've got redundancy power coming in. Who's the customer?
It's the tenant would be any company that realizes that they're gonna have a shift to one of those 3 things over the next 5 years, and they realize their current real estate needs are not a good fit. Which that's gonna be so anyone that's gonna be looking at, you know, electrified semis, you see that Amazon switched to almost all electrified semis. UPS has done that. FedEx has done that a little bit. You're gonna see an explosion in that since all the logistics companies have already switched that. Um, AI, everyone's using AI. There's going to be some need for some on-site agentic compute, especially when the cost. I mean, you look at the big AI companies right now, they're spending on average between 100 and 160% of their gross revenues on licensing fees to NVIDIA.
Yeah.
So our little $200 a month subscription payment, like that's not even covering their license fees for the GPUs.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's not going to say 200, it's going to be like two or $3,000 a month. So it's going
yeah.
to be in the next 3 or 4 years.
It's really, I just finished watching, Jensen from NVIDIA being
Yeah.
interviewed by Lex Friedman, um, and he described the building with all his compute in it as the factory, right? And of course, his balance sheet is so huge, like you said, he's just leasing the stuff to them, right?
Yeah.
And printing money and then and uh whatever the next generation is, it's kind of like outsourcing the compute to the to Nvidia simply because whatever the chip will be, whatever the next chip will be better off being on their balance sheet than your balance sheet, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, you got the depreciation factor there, number 1. You've got the cash flow factor, number 2, and then you have this need to, that once the majority of the training of the current data that's online or and the other sources is done, the training GPUs are not gonna be as necessary going forward. And so, he's gonna be able to repurpose those for other things, but a normal company that's leasing all these GPUs from them, they're only gonna need them. They're only need 90% of them for the next, 2 or 3 or 4 years, and they're gonna be done with them. So it's really a smart business model where he can repurpose those.
Yeah, really interesting. What do you think? In full disclosure, I'm an investor in this solution. What do you think about the mini nuclear power plants that fit on the back of a trailer?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's gonna be with David Sachs as the new, I think he's the czar of
He's the
was it
crypto.
czar technology?
Yeah, the-
He
well, on the administration for digital, right? Right?
Yeah.
Sachs from All In.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So
Yeah,
he was like the digital czar. I think he's transferred to something even higher, like the infrastructure czar or something like that. But he's got multiple. He's a crypto czar, then the digital czar. I think is what it
yeah,
was.
yeah.
And but yeah, I mean, this is the modular nuclear plants is one of his 2 or 3 emphasis like that. That's really what he's pushing right now. Um, and I think it's going to take some time to get us there. I think that's part of the bet too with Elon trying to push these satellites to space that the solar rays up there are going to be more accessible before he's able to build the modular nuclear reactors here and get those permitted here on Earth. So that's going to be the big technology race is against regulation here with the
Yeah,
portable nuclear versus the space race and the launching of data centers into space
that's
that would
really interesting.
quell the
Yeah.
demand.
Yeah,
Yeah,
what Jensen was saying is that if you position the satellite in the right place, it gets 24-hour solar, so it's like endless power, right? And then the challenge is then making it resilient, cooling, and then, radiation, right? Those are the things as I understand it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've I've got some capital demand right now. I don't know that I'm going to do this, but I've got some capital demand right now to put together a data center short fund. So I've been thinking about this a lot the last month or so. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
certainly
I would
you,
really be interested in wondering how to express that because they're, I mean, everybody just threw into that really fast, right?
they did, and I decided like I don't know that I want to be the most hated man in real estate. Right?
Right.
By having the data center short fund. But it's wild. So I was at a restaurant here in Houston last Tuesday or Wednesday night with my wife, and we ran into some people that we know who's a senior executive at a big, top 20 energy natural gas firm. And he told me, "Yeah, Rick, we're investing in a data center joint venture because we think we can provide the gas to power the turbines more efficiently." I
Yeah.
said, "So you're talking about on-site power generation, natural gas." So have you looked at the lifespan of some of those turbines from, Chanet Rock and a number of other providers? A lot of those, they're not gonna run for more than 5 years with heavy, heavy maintenance, unless
Uh,
you're gonna build a full force power plant on there, but you're gonna need 100 acres. You're gonna need about 25% of your footprint of a development to be just pure power plant.
yeah.
And so, but they just wanna jump on the data center train. It's amazing.
The
It's like
FOMO.
if
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, why don't we just short everything that has any excitement at any time? Like, that's just the investment strategy. We're just gonna
Would it
short
be a
everything
good
that
fund?
anyone's excited about.
You
Yes,
would do more
yes.
better than Nancy Pelosi, right? So I have a friend that's considering he's talked to a number of power plants where a company has gone in and said, this is the thesis, right? The power plant has to provide 24 hours, 24/7 power, but it doesn't need it all the time. So it's got excess power regularly. And then it has the grid can't stand the spike, which is part of the problem, right? So when
Mhm.
the power spikes, there's not enough power and the grid gets fragile. We all know this is pretty. But what he's done is built the data center on the premises of the power company
Okay.
and taken the excess power, stored it, uh, but also sent it out to data centers. You basically built the data center on premise, so they always have consistent power at a price point that would otherwise not be available because it's excess. And so they
Yeah.
true it up, you know, so and they sell it back to them when they need the spike. And so the latency for the power center might suffer a little bit. That's kind of an interesting idea, right? Right at the
It is.
source.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And we saw a little bit of that in West Texas with the Bitcoin miners a few years ago where they would
Yeah,
go take over these old gas taps and run it while they could run it. And then when the gas was gone, they just wouldn't run it. Or maybe, I
yeah.
think that I think what you described is gonna be something, right? It's an efficiency slash an arbitrage, right? And so I think that's a really, really great strategy for trying to do some work that's not too time sensitive. Like, you could train the AI on that, but because you don't need to be training 24 hours a day. You could train 20 hours a day, and that's sufficient.
It totally.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it solves the grid problem though, because the data center that's on site at the power plant still has to push out. Oh, it doesn't actually. It can do all the compute on site. Yeah, interesting. It could be. I mean, it's just at the beginning of all this, right?
Yeah, and it's all gonna change. I have a little bit of a thesis about this. I think that the Facebooks and the Googles and the hyperscalers, I think that they're pushing out between 3x and 5x, so 300 500% of the demand to developers. So they're saying, like, if I need 100, if I need one development, I'm gonna go to 5 different developers. I'm gonna put them all on the job of finding this one development, but I'm not gonna tell them about each other.
Right.
And so these 5 developers, they go to 5 different power companies or 10 different power companies, say, "Okay, we need, 30 megawatts of power, in this geographical location. What can you do?" But they're all doing that. They're all doing that. And so I don't know what the exact number is. I don't think anyone does, but I suspect there's between 3x and 5x more power demand on the market that the utilities think are gonna be needed. And I think there's gonna be an overbuilding time. I think over the next 3 to 4 years, there's gonna be an overbuild, and there'll be an oversupply in years 5 and 6 and 7, and slowly the market will catch up and that power demand will be there. Um, but if you take out the geopolitical nature of of what happens in energy, energy over time should be approaching zero. Um, because you've got efficiency, you've got scale, you've got automation. And you also have quasi free sources like solar and geothermal that should be approaching zero over time. I'm just shocked that energy prices are this high. Like I just don't understand it. Like I don't understand what the business model is of it, especially on the grid side.
Yeah. So we blame it on Texas?
We could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'd rather just blame it on Gavin Newsom. If we could just blame it on Gavin, that'd just make my life a lot easier.
What a shithead. Yeah. Um, I mean, talk about if you took somebody and said, "Here's what the person from California looks like that all he cares about is optics," there's Gavin Newsom, right? It's
That's right. That's right. So funny thing. The next room over, Gavin Newsom's ex-wife has been here before, and
what a what an embarrassment she is. Where do these people live? They live in this echo chamber. Like, I've only heard her open her mouth a couple times, and it was all just like, "What world do you live in?" Right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think she's the ambassador to Greece now. I think is what her role is. I think he may have had two ex-wives. I'm talking about Kimberly Guilfoyle, the one that
Oh,
was on the.
Kimberly. Yeah,
Yeah,
Kimberly is
yeah.
the ambassador to Greece, but she was dating Trump's son.
That's right. That's who she was here with. She was here with Don Jr.
Yeah.
in the next room,
So
and
I have spent some time with her, not intimately, just to be clear for the record. Uh, but I met her first while she was going on a date with a friend of mine, and then because she was on the five, remember?
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And so I met her in New York first time, and then I met her again at a very good friend of mine's house party where he was gonna date her, right? So I've had some. It was really two interesting interactions. But look, I have no idea what I'm talking about. But I think what happened is Don sort of dismissed her, and they had to give her the. She's not even Greek, as far as I know.
no, I don't think so either.
Yeah,
I don't think so. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
he's like,
He found someone new in Florida. I think that's what happened.
yeah. So, yeah, super interesting. Yeah, I happen to be Greek, so I don't give a shit one way or the other. But it was I see it on my feed that she's they're talking, to the Greek ambassador. I'm going, how did this all happen? So it seems to make sense that it was kind of like here's an ambassadorship, right? Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah. But yeah, yeah. It's kind of crazy. Like all these people that are rolling around the world in these really important roles, like how they got there, how they
yeah.
got it's just sort of it's a miracle for most of them.
I think so. There's a fair amount of there's good ego and bad ego, right? But there's a fair amount of people that just need that uh, uh, have to be viewed as something special in other people's eyes, right?
Yeah,
I think that's part of it.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think by the way, congratulations, not just you, but Texas, making it a good place to be, right? People, leaving California, going to Florida, coming to Texas, leaving New York, going to Florida, Texas. I mean, don't mess with Texas, right? It's
yeah.
really, I mean, it has its issues, I'm sure, that I'm probably largely unaware of, but I've always felt like it was, a welcoming place.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a place of freedom. It's a place of free enterprise. You look at the new stock exchange that's opened in Dallas recently. Um, you look at, I mean, just all the growth and everything. There's no one's leaving Texas. Like everyone's coming here from other places. Now we're hoping that they don't bring their political ideologies and their anti-family, anti-business policies with them, but they're welcome.
Yeah.
Um, so let me give you an example of like how crazy Texas is. I used to volunteer doing economic development. So we would try to recruit businesses to come here to Texas. And there was one year where we were just this is probably, Arthur, maybe 15 years ago. We were just going like gangbusters, and we were having companies come in, CEOs would come in, they come into Houston, and we would rent a Chinook helicopter, and we put 15 people on a Chinook or however many people fit on there, and we toured the different areas of
Nice.
Texas of Houston.
Yeah.
You could build here, you could build here, you could do this. And there's a Texas Medical Center, which is sort of a skyline type of area south of downtown, a few miles south of downtown. And there's more square footage in that back then than the entire downtowns of LA and San Antonio combined. And it's all hospitals and research institutions, which is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
And but that was one of the few places we could actually land a Chinook and get in there. But over like a 12-month period, we brought so many companies here. We brought 5 billion in investment and created 5,000 jobs with that. But I was at one meeting one time. There was an old, I think there's an old Air Force base south of Houston called Ellington Air Force Base. I think they've used it for some military still, but it's not really used that much. And there was so much business development happening at that time. There was a major company coming in, and they needed a spaceport or something like that. And I was with the guy leading the delegation, and he was like, "Rick, I think we should start negotiating. Like they really need. If we could give them the spaceport down here, this Ellington Field, it would work out great." And so he calls the governor as I'm standing there. He calls the governor. I think it's Rick Perry back then, and he says, "Hey, what do you think about us offering this to him? And have you talked to the congressional representatives about it?" And said, "Yeah, but we got it. We can do that, but we've actually just offered it to FedEx."
Ooh.
So they were offering these large military bases for
Yeah.
multiple companies to come in at the same time. These companies were sort of outbidding each other to be able to get it, and that's just how active things were back then. And it's accelerated so much that down the street from me, within 10 minutes, Eli Lilly just announced they're building one manufacturing facility, like one building for 4 billion, just in one site, and
That
it's not even inside of Houston proper.
wow. Yeah. Yeah. Commerce is good, right?
It is.
And it's really amazing to see what's happening with the Ukraine war, which we don't hear about anymore. And then we've got the war in the Middle East, which is everybody's focus right now. And the stock market's frothy. Um, and people are booking revenue. It's a good time to be alive.
It is. It is. Well, and it's interesting why we never hear about Ukraine anymore. The only thing I hear about Zelensky is he's out trying to sell drones to other foreign governments.
Exactly. Using our money. Like he built them with our money and then selling them to foreign governments.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You would think we'd be able to buy them before everyone else could.
Yeah. Look, you know, if you didn't think before Elon did a little Doge work that there was nonsense going on, talk about a circular economy, right? Money goes this way, government deploys it, half of it goes to somebody else, funds the campaigns. Vivek Ramaswamy wrote a book called Woke or something like that right before he ran.
Yeah.
And he laid it out exactly what happens with the politicians who are able to get money deployed from the government taxpayer base and how it makes the circle all the way back to them. And along the way, everybody's taking their little slice. It's kind of like the mafia. Yeah, I need a little vig, right?
So I was when I had the federal contracting business, I was the end of the federal year is October 1st. I guess October 1st beginning of the year, so end of September. I was at a large VA medical center, multiple million square foot hospital worth several billion dollars. And I was there the last week of September. This has been 15, 20 years ago. It's been a long time. And I was walking to go see some clients and in that facility, and one of them came out of one of the board meetings that they have every morning there, and he pulled me aside. He said, "Rick, we've got to spend some money today." I said, "Well, what?" And we're doing real estate services, so we're managing like complicated facility changes and construction and stuff like that. And I said, "What do you mean you got to spend money?" He said, I- "He said I need to spend $24 million today. What can you sell me for $20 million?" I said, I really appreciate that because I know we do a good job for you. I really do appreciate the loyalty, but I don't want to go to federal prison.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
there's nothing I'm gonna sell you for $20 million. Like,
Yeah.
you're on your own, my friend.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's just sort of the nature of it. If you don't if you don't spend it, you lose it.
yeah. It's really troubling if you listen, I give most people, the preponderance of the population, a pass to not know this stuff
Mhm.
because they're busy taking care of their family, make sure they get up and go to work and bring Johnny to soccer, you know, juggling things to make sure life is okay for their family, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And like, you're not going to listen to the mainline news. You might doom scroll for a little while, and you may attach yourself to an ideology that supports your current one, and that's it. You don't have time to do anything else, right?
yeah,
So, the people who don't know about how this all really works, and it's probably best that they live in that sort of space because they probably couldn't do anything about it anyway. But it's when you figure out what's really going on, uh, it's kind of like what's the it's the U.S. Republic is the worst of every republic except for every other republic, right?
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
it's still the best game in town.
yeah, yeah. And you wonder if the the words of Solomon are true, that the people that know the least about what's going on are the ones that have the highest chances of being happy.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that like what you said earlier is the things you choose not to think about, right? Having that free real estate in your head, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, just to let it go, you know?
that's right.
It
That's
really
right.
is unbelievable. So, I'd like to do this again in a couple months if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I love to, Arthur.
I'd like to one of the things I think the most fascinating thing you said was that, it's kinda like getting retraded on a real estate deal. You make an offer to somebody and you know they're gonna go retrade you, right?
Yes.
Unless you go
Yes.
hard and put a standstill agreement with some money down, they're gonna go out and say, "Okay, someone just offered me 120,000,000 and you give me 122 and you're in," right? Not a lot you
Yeah.
can do about that. So the multiple bids to the for the power to create these data centers that has created artificial synthetic demand, which is going to
Yes.
backfire on us, right?
Yes. Yeah. And they're all tied regulatorily into the states. Not all of them, most of them are,
Yeah,
right? And so it just impacts all of us.
yeah, yeah. That might be a good short, depending on how you express it. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Look forward to coming back anytime, Arthur.
yeah, Rick, thank you for the chat. Really appreciate it, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Till next time.